Today we are talking about diamond sanctions. That's right, the elephant in the room. Why are they? What are they? Who do they affect? What do we know? What don't we know at this early stage? There's a lot to discuss, and we'll get into all of that. But know this from the start, that this is the defining story of 2024. It's going to change the market and have a profound impact on everyone's business, regardless of where you sit along the diamond distribution chain. Before we get to the nitty-gritty, if you love diamonds and jewelry, want to learn more about the industry, want to deepen your understanding of what's happening in the market, then like this video, subscribe to my channel, hit the bell notification for updates, and check out my website, avikravitz.com, for more. Okay, so on December 6th, the G7 nations put out a joint statement outlining additional sanctions on Russia, aiming to limit the funding of Russia's war in Ukraine. The G7 includes Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States, but we can include the broader European Union in that, as the European Commission has played a central role in developing the sanctions and will play a central role in their implementation moving forward. So let's get to the why. As we all know, on February 24th, 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, sparking widespread international condemnation over the move, and general sanctions were implemented targeting mainly Russia's oil and gas sector and its financial services, blocking the ability to transfer funds for Russian goods and services. Diamonds were touched on, but there was uncertainty within governments and frankly within the trade on how to approach the subject. Russia is the largest producer of rough diamonds by volume, with mining company Alrosa accounting for upwards of 95% of the country's production and about 25 to 30% of global production by volume. That's the number of carats that it takes out of the ground. The Russian Federation owns a 33% stake in Alrosa, and so revenue from diamond sales go directly to the government and de facto to the war effort. The United States, by far the largest consumer market for diamonds and diamond jewelry, placed Alrosa and its executives on its sanctions list and banned direct diamond imports from Russia. What was the problem with that? Well, there are very few imports of diamonds directly coming from Russia to consumer markets such as the United States. Think of the diamond journey. Rough is sold and shipped to trading centers such as Antwerp or Dubai, and subsequently to manufacturing centers such as, well, India is the primary cutting center. So the Russian goods are typically rough diamonds, and they'd be traded in Antwerp or Dubai and then manufactured into a polished diamond, typically in India. By the time the diamond gets to the retail jeweler in the United States, the stone has been substantially transformed from its original form, which then begs the question, is that diamond a Russian diamond, or is it from India, the center from where, in our example, the finished product was created? It's a question of source versus origin. Significantly, the EU refrained from implementing any sanctions until now. Why? Because there was concern that Belgium would lose its place in the market. As a rough trading center, if only Antwerp implements sanctions, it would lose business to other centers which would not have had a ban in place, namely Dubai, but also the likes of Mumbai and Tel Aviv. This is important when we start to understand the new mechanisms that have been put in place. The EU essentially had to find a way to keep a level playing field in the competition for rough business, and in fact sought to elevate Antwerp's position in the market, which many believe it has now done. So what are the new sanctions that were announced on December 6th? There are 3 dates we need to be aware of and keep in mind throughout: January 1st, March 1st, and September 1st, 2024. On January 1st, a ban on direct imports from Russia to all G7 countries was implemented, similar to the measures that were already in place in the United States. From March 1st, the ban will be extended to diamonds polished in third countries from Russian origin rough, accounting then for our substantial transformation challenge, and that will apply to goods above 1 carat in size. From September 1st, the ban will be extended to lab-grown diamonds, jewelry, and watches containing diamonds larger than half a carat. With that in place, and keep those dates in mind, the challenge that then needs to be solved is, how do you prove that a diamond that has been substantially transformed was or was not from Russian origin rough? The short answer is that the diamond needs to be tracked or traced or accounted for throughout its journey from rough to retail. And indeed, the sanctions will mandate that all non-Russian diamonds must be accounted for via a blockchain-based ledger, which will, excuse the jargon, be interoperational with several traceability programs. A pilot program will begin on March 1st, and the program will go into full effect on September 1st, our two special dates popping up again. And this is where the whole thing gets complicated and opens a plethora of questions and skepticism within the trade with regard to how it's all going to work, if it's going to work, the timeline given to get it going, who benefits, if there'll be an additional cost to the trade, how it will affect market efficiency, and the questions go on and on and on and on. Not a lot of details have been made public. I just worked on an article for Rappaport exploring various aspects of the sanctions. So let's break down what we know, what I found out, some of which is public and some information which was told to me by various sources on the sidelines. All non-Russian rough production will need to pass through Antwerp, where a digital twin of the diamond will be created and uploaded to a blockchain ledger. Potentially, there are two exceptions to this that I'm told are being considered. That is, exceptions to the rule that the goods have to be shipped to Belgium for registration. The first is that Canada, as the only G7 producer country, may be able to register its production locally. The second exception being discussed are goods that are earmarked for beneficiation. Beneficiation being the process of cutting and polishing in the country in which the diamonds were recovered as a means to add value to that local economy. For example, if a diamond was mined in Namibia and planned to be cut and polished in a factory there, then Namibia would potentially be empowered to certify that diamond as being G7 compliant. What that does is it prevents the beneficiation goods from being double shipped. In other words, a rough diamond mined in Namibia would otherwise need to be sent to Antwerp for registration and then returned to Namibia for cutting and polishing before it is then shipped again to a trading center or consumer market. So the double shipping won't apply for beneficiation goods as far as I understand, but it will be an issue for others in the distribution chain. The most obvious are the tender houses who hold auctions or tenders of rough in other locations such as Dubai or Tel Aviv, let's say, will need to send their goods through Antwerp first. It's another step in the journey for them and potentially also for dealers. Antwerp will argue that goods go through trading centers anyway, and many go through Antwerp anyway, and if they don't already, they should go through Antwerp, which has the infrastructure, the knowledge and expertise, and the population of traders to add value to the process. Well, others will argue that Antwerp has become less relevant in recent years and has become increasingly difficult to do business there with, for example, a banking sector that is not diamond friendly and a highly regulated business environment. Now, that may be a reason that Belgium is a good place to manage the system, because it takes this compliance stuff very seriously, arguably more so than other centers. And perhaps if the ability to certify goods as G7 compliant is given to many locations, it would open the system up to manipulation, that is the mixing of Russian goods into the compliant pile. Just a word on Belgian banking though. There is a perception that part of the compliance will require companies to open an office in Belgium and to open a bank account there too. And it is notoriously difficult for anyone associated with the diamond industry to open a bank account in Belgium, as the banks there view the industry as a high-risk sector. My understanding is that opening an office or bank account in Belgium is not a stipulation of the new measures, but it needs clarification and communication on that point. But I think regardless, if Belgium is intent on playing such a central role in the diamond industry, it needs to create friendlier conditions for the trade. Otherwise, it will lose out to Dubai and elsewhere, regardless of any new measures that are in place, as it has already lost out in recent years. One of the important consequences of the registration process is that it will prevent companies from mixing rough from different sources before being certified. A tender house that relies on different sources from different mines in different countries to create added value through its rough assortments will only be able to create those assortments once the goods have gone through the registration process in Antwerp. The most glaring and important example of this is De Beers. De Beers mines diamonds in 4 different countries: Botswana, Canada, Namibia, and South Africa. Most of its production from those locations are sent to Gaborone, Botswana, where they are mixed into thousands of different categories in a process known as aggregation. So the De Beers goods are mixed source. They're mixed from different locations. From what I'm told is that the De Beers goods will be an exception in that the company's mixed assortments will be able to be uploaded to the blockchain and certified in Belgium. They'll be the only mixed assortment goods enabled on the system. It's not clear to me who will send the goods to Belgium for certification. Will it be De Beers after aggregation and before its sale or before a site? Or will the onus be on the buyer, the site holder, who ultimately exports it? It would make sense to me to begin the process with the buyer or with the exporter. That would avoid some of the double shipping issues. It would also ease the concerns about how the new system will affect the artisanal mining sector. It can't be left to the miners themselves to facilitate registration. They simply don't have the means to do so. But if they're selling their production legitimately, then the buyer will need to export it to Belgium for registration. And I don't see it having a major impact on the artisanal miners themselves in that case. We'll see. I may be wrong on this issue. What I will say is to echo something that one of my sources emphasized in our conversation on this issue. This is an opportunity to really invest in the artisanal mining sector. And here I'm looking at the G7 countries, those governments that are imposing these systems on the trade. They need to ensure that the most vulnerable segments of the industry are accounted for and uplifted. They need to support financially those programs working with artisanal miners, programs such as the Diamond Development Initiative and others. The other vulnerable segment is India's cottage industry, consisting of tens of thousands of artisans, cutters, traders who will deal with goods after they've been uploaded to the system. They don't necessarily have the technology to ensure the continued traceability of the diamond that includes their stage of the pipeline, that it can be shown once the goods are ready for export to the G7 countries. Frankly, I'm more concerned about the impact the sanctions will have on that segment of the market than it might have on artisanal miners, because they're dealing with goods further along the distribution chain. How do we empower them and others, small dealers and traders, with the technology required to maintain a record of the diamond's journey? That brings us to the question of the traceability mechanisms themselves. What information is going to be required? Who will own that information? Who will have access to it? What information will be made public? As an aside, Antwerp stopped publishing its monthly diamond trade data 3 or 4 years ago, which was always a point of frustration for me trying to understand the market. For this to work, there needs to be full transparency on all levels. Additional questions are: who will provide the traceability? What requirements will the service provider need to meet to participate in the program? These are all questions that are pending and that need to be answered in the next 2 months before the pilot program begins on the 1st of March. Here's what we do know. There'll be a centralized blockchain ledger, and the Antwerp Diamond Office, a government office operated by the Antwerp World Diamond Centre, a trade organization, will register the goods and upload them to the ledger using a traceability service provider or service providers. There are only a handful of traceability service providers operating in the diamond space. Among them are Authentia, which is a lesser known one, but I think interesting. And there's Everledger, the GRA, iTraceIt, Sarin Technologies, and Tracer, which is the De Beers program. We don't know at this stage if all of them or some of them or only one of them will be contracted to work in the program. And then there's a legitimate question of scale and whether these traceability programs can handle the large volume of goods that will be passing through Antwerp. Remember, these programs are relatively new, and their focus until now has been on helping the jewelry brands account for their supply to facilitate better storytelling. So the volumes have been fairly low, and the systems have not been put to the test at such a scale in the market, though some claim they can handle such quantities efficiently. And for me, the efficiency of the market is something I'm concerned about. In today's business environment, part of a supplier's competitive edge is the efficiency with which they can supply a retailer with their diamonds. Jewelers are becoming increasingly demanding for quicker delivery and a shorter turnaround times, and there's a ripple effect for that demand for greater efficiency across the pipeline. And the industry has responded. It has made great strides in recent years in shortening the process of getting a diamond through the whole system from mine to market. In that sense, this feels like a giant step backwards. Related to that is the question of cost. Potential additional shipping costs, the cost of certification, and the cost of using the traceability technology. Who's going to bear that, and how's it going to work? The European Commission has said that given the price of diamonds, the cost will be negligible. But tell that to a manufacturer who counts his pennies and watches his margins so closely. I do like that this is a tech-driven initiative. It's not going to require a grand personal promise or assurance in which we rely on a company's word, or extra audits for that matter. With the technology that's available today, why is the industry still so reliant on these tedious and intensive audits to provide source verification, compliance, and to showcase one's responsible sourcing credentials? That said, given the technology, surely the system can be implemented at multiple locations, at a mine site, or at a customs office, or a country's Kimberley process office. Perhaps that will come later, once the system has been proven and verified and gained the trust of bureaucrats and the trade. There is concern at this early stage that the system might be manipulated if it's not centralized, and Antwerp is a good place to manage the system, again, given its strict regulatory enforcement, even if it's a clear attempt to maintain Antwerp's relevance in the market. There's no one really hiding that fact, even Antwerp. It's also good that this will be policed by governments and not the trade. Again, there's enough self-auditing in the diamond and jewelry industry. So there's a lot going on. There's going to be a lot of discussion about this in the next few months, and hopefully engagement between the G7 Working Committee and the industry will be ramped up to iron out the many issues that this brings, with a clear and transparent communication about it to the rest of the trade who it really affects. I hope this video sheds some light into the discussion. Know that it's going to affect your business, and it's going to do so quite soon. This story is not going away. If you found this helpful, like this video and share it and leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Check out my previous video in which I outline some other market developments that I expect will shape the diamond industry this year. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.